You know, there are some leaks on this channel that we look at and I think, maybe that could happen. You know, maybe there's some reality where those things could come to pass, even if the sources themselves aren't so credible. But there are also some leaks that I look at and I just think, jog on, pal. I mean, in fairness, some of them end up actually being true, which makes me feel all the more sad. But in this case, I can pretty confidently say that this is probably not going to happen. But it was such an insanely funny read to me that I wanted to look at it anyway. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to take a look at a Reddit leak, quote unquote, that I saw that just made me laugh. And fair play to whoever wrote this. It's very detailed, they'll give you that. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not happening. I mean, look, I will put a fiver on it to say it's not happening. Look, you know, I'm not made of money, but subscribe if you're new. We do regular Doctor Who content here on the channel. Any support would be greatly appreciated, and let's dive right in. Doctor Who 2027 leak. Please be aware, I do not know how credible this is. A friend of mine on Twitter who was involved in shooting out his final season of Doctor Who has just now sent me what reads as a series Bible. Please take with a pinch of salt. Probably a big pinch. I have no idea if I'm being trolled or if this is legit. And yes, this Reddit account is brand new. I'm a little paranoid about getting into trouble if this is true. Come on, it's obviously not. But okay, let's actually have a look at this. So, the first image we have is what appears to be a Doctor Who series Bible with Doctor Who Fugitive, BBC Studios Productions, and it says DW27 series Bible, Pete McTeague, obviously 2027 series Bible. Here you can see in more detail, that's what it looks like. Immediately I can tell you this isn't gonna happen, but let's just humor this for a second. Let's just see what it has to say for itself. Doctor Who Fugitive, Series Bible, Core Briefing, Series Overview. Doctor Who Fugitive is a 6-part limited drama that explores a previously unseen incarnation of the Doctor, set long before the first Doctor, during her time as a fugitive from Gallifrey's covert intelligence organisation, the Division. This series reframes Doctor Who as a tense, morally complex sci-fi thriller, blending espionage, horror and tragedy. It is not about discovering the Doctor's origins. It is about confronting the cost of survival without kindness, and the moment the Doctor chooses to become someone better. This is not a reinvention of Doctor Who, but a missing chapter, a sealed, painful memory that explains why the Doctor later draws such hard moral lines. Okay, so what I will say, in the slight defense of this pitch, obviously whoever's written this, fair play, they've done a good job of making this look like a series Bible. What I will say is, immediately when I heard this pitch, I was like, they're never gonna do a Fugitive Doctor series, especially not as the main series after this Christmas special. There's no way, because it's way too insular, way too fan-brained, way too obsessed with stuff that's gone on in the past. What I will say though is that they seem to agree that that would be too much of a stretch, because they kind of say that, you know, if this thing was real, which it isn't, it wouldn't be about how the Doctor's origins came about, more so it would just be set in that time period. Would I be completely opposed to maybe a spin-off for this? Maybe, maybe not. It would really depend on how it was executed. I still don't love the idea of pre-Hartnell Doctors just as a concept, to be honest, even though it's been a while and, you know, largely at the Timeless Child, I don't have the energy to be annoyed at the Timeless Child these days. But however, yeah, I think it would be a bizarre choice to do this, at least as a main series. I can maybe see an argument for it, you know, as a spin-off thing. I mean, I know that The Fugitive is leading that new multimedia event that they've got going on, that's the new version of Time Lord Victorious, what's it called, Code Breakers or something. So they clearly want to do some stuff with her. Do I think that they would fund an entire series about a pretty divisive, you know, retcon to Doctor Who when the show is just barely, you know, getting made? I doubt it. But anyway, let's carry on with this supposed leak. Format, limited series, 6 episodes. Episode 1 to 4, standalone narratives with interlocking themes. Episodes 5 and 6, 2-part finale. Tone, adult, restrained, tense. Accessibility, standalone for new viewers, deeply rewarding for long-term fans. There is no reset, no undoing, and no soft landing. I guess one of the slight advantages of telling a story within this period of the Doctor Who universe is that, you know, you're not bound by, oh, everything has to be reset to a status quo at the end, because obviously whenever you're in like modern day Earth, everything has to kind of be reset. Obviously, this could be set at any period of time, and it can just be allowed to exist in its own little corner, I guess, which is a bonus. But I can also say the same for like if you did like a Paul McGann Eighth Doctor miniseries, right? Like if you set something in the past, anything can happen in the past, and it doesn't necessarily have to affect the future of the show going forwards. And I honestly think, of the two, probably a Paul McGann series would be more likely. I'm not saying that would happen either, but like, I feel like more people would want that, and it'll be a less controversial thing. Core premise: the fugitive Doctor is running not from monsters, but from institutional control. Once an operative for Division, she now lives in constant motion, intervening selectively, hiding her past, and avoiding attachments. She believes survival is morally neutral. The series asks one central question: what happens when the Doctor survives long enough to realise survival itself has become the problem? I will say, I do like some of the themes that this supposed leak is throwing around. It's not completely devoid of interesting ideas. Power without accountability. The Division represents absolute authority operating beyond oversight. Its actions are not evil, they are procedural. This makes them terrifying. I will say as well, this is very similar to like the vibes of the first Fugitive Big Finish series, which I did listen to. It's very similar to that, which I suppose, if this was real, again, I'm acting like this has any chance of being real. It isn't. But like, I suppose that would make sense to take inspiration from. The cost of running. Running does not prevent harm, it redistributes it. Every avoided choice creates collateral damage. Okay. Human consequences. Through Molly, a human from the 31st century of Earth, the Doctor is forced to confront what her choices cost ordinary people. Erasure as violence. Memory wipes, timeline edits, and disappearances are treated as not plot divisive, but acts of harm. Interesting. The birth of the promise. The Doctor's future moral code is not inherited, it is earned through failure. I do like the idea that, like, the moral code is not something the Doctor is inherently, like, born with, because that is one of my issues with, like, the Timeless Child as a thing, is that, like, the idea that the Doctor's always been the Doctor before they learn the lessons of Hartnell. So I guess this would somewhat address it by showing how Fugitive learned those lessons, but again, I feel like applying those lessons onto a different Doctor just rubs me the wrong way, The Doctor, this incarnation, the Fugitive Doctor, is competent, guarded, pragmatic, emotionally contained. She is not cruel, but she is selective. She does not live by absolutes. She has not yet learned that neutrality is a choice. This incarnation represents the Doctor before restraint, before the promise to be never cruel, never cowardly. I guess that means that you can do more stuff with the character. There is potential in a morally grey Doctor. Things like the Time of Victoria's prove that. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like, again, it's one of those things where it's like the main show is not even like really in a place that's like great at the moment. The idea of doing this is just, the timing is not right. If it was like, I don't know, if this came out directly after series 12, I could maybe have seen this. Now though, I don't see anything like this ever happening. Molly, human anchor. Molly is a human security officer from the 31st century of Earth, assigned to protect the Prime Minister of New Scotland. She is politically literate, ethically firm, and impressed by cosmic authority. Molly does not idolise the Doctor, she questions her. Her presence challenges the fugitive Doctor's belief that running avoids harm. Molly understands systems and recognises that Division is a system without accountability. Molly's execution by the Division in front of the Doctor is the emotional detonation that drives the two-part finale. I like the idea of a companion dying, and by dying by, like, the main antagonist, that's an interesting idea. The Division, the primary antagonist of the series. Gallifreyan covert organisation, operates outside Time Lord law, views the Doctor as an asset turned liability. The Division is calm, efficient, and impersonal. It does not seek revenge, it seeks containment, recurring external pressures. Reminds me a lot of like Loki and how the what are they called? What are the time people called in Loki? I can't remember. The TVA, that's it. TVA, and how they'll like purge any like, weird branching timelines. Kind of reminds me a bit of that, which is not a terrible idea for a Doctor Who series. Judoon, contracted hunters enforcing Division will without moral judgment. That makes sense, playing on the idea of the Judoon as kind of corrupt. Police makes a lot of sense. Weeping Angels, ancient temporal predators reinforcing themes of erasure and punishment. Additional established Doctor Who creatures appear as consequences, not villains. Monsters are never the point, systems are. I hope that they wouldn't do the thing, obviously, again. I like to think like this is real. For the sake of argument, let's just, like, ignore the fact that this is obviously fake. I would hope that we wouldn't do the Weeping Angel actually work for the division thing that they did in Flux, because I really didn't like that. Structural philosophy, episodes 1 to 4 are designed to function as complete stories, each exploring a different facet of the series' themes: being hunted, leaving damage behind, witnessing institutional cruelty, refusing to intervene. Threads interlock subtly, rewarding full viewing without requiring it. Episodes 5 and 6 form a unified finale in which the Doctor stops running and confronts the inevitability of her own continuation. I like that. I like that as a style. I think 6 episodes is probably like about right for something like this. The finale, what this series is really about. The death of Molly forces the Doctor to confront an unbearable truth. This version of herself cannot continue. The Doctor does not defeat the division. She does not overthrow Gallifrey. She does not win. Instead, she chooses erasure. Not as punishment, but as prevention. She engineers the condition for a future self. Less ruthless, less isolated. Bound by rules she herself lacked. This act directly leads toward memory wipe, exile, the eventual emergence of the First Doctor. Again, I think this stuff, like, I get where you're going. I get where you're going. I see what you're stepping. My issue with this, though, is, like, I don't like the idea of seeing Fugitive become the First Doctor. It just, for me, it's like, it's just something that doesn't need to happen, you know? Canon integrity, no lingering companions requiring explanation, no paradoxes introduced, fully compatible with the Timeless Child framework, adds emotional context without rewriting history. This series explains why the Doctor became who they are without changing what they are. I just don't think we need to know all the details of that, though, you know? Visual and tonal identity. Muted palette, minimalist score, violence depicted as a sudden and administrative, no spectacle for spectacle's sake. This universe feels vast but indifferent. Position within the franchise. Doctor Who Fugitive is not a reboot, not a replacement, not a spin-off for spin-off's sake. It is a sealed tragedy designed to deepen the mythology without demanding continuation. One series, one story, no escape. I guess as a one-off thing, it could be interesting. Again, I think for me it's like, is this really, like, obviously, again, it's not happening, but, like, let's just say for argument's sake it was. Would this really be the right time to do this? Final note on the series breakdown. This is the story of the Doctor who survived and realised survival was not enough. The Fugitive Doctor does not become a hero, she becomes a warning. And that warning echoes forward into everything Doctor Who will one day stand for. This goes on a bit, talks about the characters in depth and the legacy within Doctor Who, but I feel like we've got the gist, right? You guys get the gist. This won't happen. This is definitely not real. What I will give it, though, is that some ideas were cool. Like, I like the idea of the Doctor kind of coming into certain aspects of themselves in some ways, but again, I don't want to see, like, oh yeah, at the end, you know, the First Doctor appears, or something like that. Like, I also like the idea of, you know, a companion being killed off by, you know, the main antagonist. I think that's an interesting idea. I like the idea of, like, it not focusing on lore so much as it does, you know, the emotional story. And I like the idea of the darker tone. I just think it's not the right time for this, and this is never happening. Maybe in, like, I don't know, maybe in, like, a different universe where the Timeless Child went over better, and, like, that storyline, you know, maybe was altered a bit. Something like this could exist. But now, I don't really see it. And you also run the risk, and this is one of the risks you would have as well, with, like, a Paul McGann spin-off of, you know, at what point, like, you're going to have people comparing this Doctor Who to whatever the main Doctor Who does. Because they say in this, it's not a spin-off, it's just, like, a one-off thing, you know, in between, which I kind of get the logic for, but again, you're inevitably going to get people saying, oh, I prefer seeing the universe pre, like, all the Doctors that we know, you know, because, like, obviously, it can have more consequence. You'll have other people saying things like, I really don't like seeing the universe pre what we know. So it'll just create, in my opinion, ironically, more division, if you will, as a premise. Again, wouldn't happen. This is never happening. But I will applaud some of the creativity on display here. I like some of the ideas presented. But yeah, it's not happening, is it? But let me know in the comments below what you guys think. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you later.